I've been dealing with this relatively new data set that looks beyond residential segregation in the United States, but focus more on how people interact with the space and what kind of people they're exposed to in their daily activity routine. So I'm going to present briefly about what I've been thinking of, what kind of directions I'm pursuing, and some very preliminary results I want to show you guys. So as we already know from the class, residential segregation with concentrated poverty in space has been a critical dimension to understand American inequality. However, over the past 2 decades, scholars in the area of segregation studies have also moved beyond residential space to activity space. So based on the premise that residential space cannot capture all social conditions as individuals experience during their daily activities. So, for example, some studies using Los Angeles Family and Neighborhood Survey and Adolescent Health and Development in Context Survey show that activity space like workplaces, schools, subways, and healthcare facilities create chances for individuals to be exposed to distinct social groups beyond their residential context. Recent studies using large-scale GPS data, actually the same as what I'm being using, reveal similar patterns that activity space in general is less segregated compared to their residential environments. This has large implications for ordinary people's life, as a large proportion of waking hours was spent by residents outside of their home, so the activity space contributes to the increasing chance of intergroup interaction in terms of race and economic opportunities. While we know that activity space can be closely linked to social connectedness, collective efficacy, intergroup exposure, and resource exchanges, we still kind of lack a systematic knowledge of how such activity space beyond residential context may also be stratified. So some economists, for example, show that urban consumption is also highly segregated, as individuals are less likely to visit restaurants in neighborhoods with dissimilar demographic features. And I also want to step in this increasing discussions of social infrastructure like libraries, which can actually facilitate social cohesion and let different people from different race and income groups meet in the same place in the era of using Putnam's famous quote, bowling alone. So my question will be guided by two general puzzles. First, what types of places form activity space where individuals may be exposed to a more diverse group of people than the place's residential context? For example, does restaurants that some economists have explored attract a more diverse or less diverse group of consumers than where they're located at? And second, although we kind of know from anecdotal and qualitative studies that some places such as libraries and museums serve as social infrastructure, but where to put them are more effective to create this social cohesion. For example, placing them in poor or rich neighborhoods, or like more Black or more mixed neighborhoods. I haven't explored the second question yet, but for first question, I'm going to show you some results. So to answer these questions, I'm using two data sets. First is the SafeGraph monthly patterns data, which is part of the COVID-19 data consortium, where they want to use this to prevent the spread of COVID using mobile phone tracing data. And this data checks detailed mobility flow information from origin census block groups to destination places like restaurants or schools. And the people that they cover roughly account for 10% of the entire US population. I aggregated between 2018, sorry, this is a typo, 2018 to 2020 as a 3-year aggregate data. And to compare it with the residential context where each place is located at, I use this ACS data derived from our tidy census package. I'm using 5-year estimate in 2019, so it's actually covering 2015 to 2019. To measure place level racial and income segregation, I use a normalized segregation index with index ranging from 0 to 1. So I'm using perfect homogeneity as the benchmark. So for example, if a place have 50% Asian, 50% white, 20% Asian, 20% white, 20% blacks, 20% Hispanics, and 20% other mixed race, then it would have a segregation index of 0. And for income segregation, I'm using quarters. So the first quarter, second quarter, just like race groups. So the higher the segregation index, the more segregated the place is. So here are some descriptives I plotted using the New York City census block groups. So the left side shows the residential racial segregation, and the right shows the experience racial segregation. So there are several patterns, but if you look at the Brooklyn part, there's actually more experience segregation than the residential segregation, probably because of a higher concentration of blacks in this part of the New York City. And if you look at like the lower Manhattan, you will see a less segregated activity space than the residential ones, probably because a lot of people transit uh, here to work and probably have a leisure. And here is an income segregation map. There are also many patterns. You still see like the lower Manhattan have relatively lower level of experienced income segregation than the residential income segregation. And if I look at this Staten Island, which assume it should be like a pretty rich island, there's much more income segregation in this part of the New York City than the residential income segregation, suggesting that actually a very universal and homogeneous group of people visiting this part of New York City pretty frequently. So then I break down the type of places by the type of the places they are, like religious organizations, death care services, postal services, restaurants, bookstores, grocery stores, and look at how each type of places may be different between their residential contexts and the people who visit them. So this dashed line represents the national average of experience and residential segregation across the places. So as you can see here, death care services and postal services, and actually I didn't uh, indicate them, but including a lot of personal care services like dental services or hospitals, are both highly segregated in terms of residential context and the people who visit them. By contrast, places like restaurants, bookstores, grocery stores, and actually places like libraries and museums, I haven't indicated them here yet. They serve as the so-called social infrastructure where their experienced segregation is actually lower than the national average. And they are also less segregated by the places where they are located at. So whereas there is a very high correlation between residential and experience segregation by race, the correlation is much less prominent for income segregation. You can still see like places like restaurants or bookstores, they're actually just on the national average in terms of the places where they're located at, but they have significantly lower level of experience segregation in income, um, suggesting that they may form the social infrastructure or social bridge where people from different income groups can be exposed to each other. And similarly, death care services and postal services have significantly higher level of income segregation, actually to a large extent than the residential context. This is probably because when you die, only those people who form a very close group with you will come, and that acts as the segregation that these places are experiencing. So this is a very preliminary results showing the first question. For the second question, I will show a part of it or many parts of it in a final project. Yeah, I would appreciate any suggestions or comments from you. Thank you.